Hello, gentle readers, I'm Captain Logan, and welcome once again to the vast and ominous comic book vault. Today on the vault, we're going to take a look at Robert Kirkman's Marvel Zombies. That's right, the original miniseries put out in 2005. Marvel Zombies is kind of a guilty pleasure for me. This is one of those things that I feel like I shouldn't love as much as I do, but I find it extremely entertaining. Part of the reason I say that I don't feel like I should love it as much as I do is just that it's zombies, and I'm not a big zombie fan. I'm not a big horror fan in general, and I have to confess, and I've said this before, I've still, to this day, never read any Walking Dead. And I still haven't seen the TV show, which I really need to do, but I just haven't gotten around to it. That's how not into zombies I am. So, honestly, Vince would probably be more qualified to review this than me, but as a Marvel fan, I feel like my perspective is kind of interesting just because, again, I really enjoy this regardless of my complete lack of interest generally in zombies. What I like about what Kirkman does with this, first of all, is that the writing is extremely fun, and the characters all sound like themselves, except that their motivations are very different because, of course, they're zombies now, and they're trying to find a way to survive. Well, kind of survive, more satiate their appetite, because, of course, being the kinds of zombies they are, they're not able to die, regardless of whether or not they get fed. So it's kind of this fun, weird juxtaposition of they're still the heroes we all know and love, and yet they're the villains. They're the bad guys in this, and it's a really fun juxtaposition. So I think the reason I enjoy this over other zombie things is that the zombies are actually the characters that we're following, and that's really unusual. Usually the zombies are completely mindless, and they're kind of a force of nature, like the Borg. The Borg, who have been very often compared to zombies, and they're somewhat similar, besides the fact that they have, kind of a hive mind, but they're drones, and zombies are sort of drone-like, where they're dead, they're corpses, they're reanimated corpses, as opposed to being characters whose minds are still intact. And here their minds are still intact. They become more mindless zombies the less satiated they are, so they have to eat to try to keep their faculties straight. And I think what's fascinating about that is that they want to, the heroes and villains in this who have been turned into zombies, they want to be like they used to be, and yet in order to do that they have to kill. And the more they eat, the more they feed on human flesh, the more they feel and act like themselves, and yet they have to do these horribly gross and horrific acts in order to get there. So I think that's what's fascinating about this. Is this a really deep book? Is this a really major thinking kind of book? No, not really. But it does have some interesting ideas and some intriguing concepts. This is fun for the same reason that What If is fun, and I think that it's very similar to What If in that it's a big what if statement. It's what if the Marvel Universe became overrun by zombies, and if all the characters we knew and loved became zombies. That's what it is. I think that if you've never read Marvel Zombies, this is the one to take a look at. And I also really like Dead Days, which was a one-shot that came after this, that was kind of the prequel to this, that really went into how they became zombies in the first place, going all the way up to the beginning of this, where Magneto is trying to fight them off, and they ultimately, spoiler warning, end up killing and violently mutilating Magneto into a bazillion pieces. And that was published also, by the way, in a hardcover similar to this, with the Ultimate Fantastic Four issues that had the Fantastic Four zombies in it, and all of that I like all of that. It's all kind of disconnected. It doesn't all have anything to do with each other. It was kind of just an excuse to get another trade together. And then after that, I lost interest. I've read Marvel Zombies 2. It's okay. Here's the thing. Kirkman opens this with, he's got a preface, and it's a really cool preface, where he's talking about how I think Kirkman wrote the preface to this. I'm almost positive. It's been a while since I've actually read that. But let me see here. Yeah, he read the preface. He wrote the preface to this, and if I remember right, what he wrote there was a lot about how this was this kind of novel idea, and I think novelty is the best way to describe this, which doesn't bother me at all. I think sometimes comic books can be for this, where it's sort of just, let's do this bizarre romp and see what happens, and that's totally what we get here. Robert Kirkman basically talks about how he never expected this book to be this popular as it got, become this big phenomenon where they kept making more and more of them. And as such, I think he backed himself into a corner, similarly to the way, this is going to be a strange reference point, but the way the producers of Back to the Future kind of backed themselves into a corner where it became a big phenomenon, so they decided they had to make sequels, and they had to figure out how they were going to use the big setup at the end, which they'd never planned on making more, to actually propel themselves into another story. And I feel like this kind of has that. I really kind of wonder, again, without giving too much away, if you haven't had a chance to read this, I don't want to spoil too terribly much about it. I'm sure most people watching this probably have at least taken a look at this, but you know, I just don't want to spoil too much in case you're watching this trying to decide if you'd like to read this after all these years never taking a look at it. This is from 2005, by the way, and man, it's hard to imagine this is already 7 years old. But anyway, my point is, I wonder, again, minor spoiler, if Robert Kirkman would have killed off as many characters in this had he known there were going to be a lot of sequels, because I think that it gets a little bit blander as it goes on because there just aren't as many characters. One of the fun things about this is just seeing all of the different Marvel characters zombified. That's a lot of the point. And a lot of characters have their own little tiny character moments where, you know, it's mostly about like the core Marvel characters that are most popular. Spider-Man, Hulk, Captain America, Iron Man, and characters like Wolverine, of course, characters like that. And I kind of think that, again, had he known that there was you know, going to be more to this, they wouldn't have killed as many off, because part of the fun was, like, you know, you get Venom's big moment where he's like yeah, the symbiote's starting to kind of die because my zombie, you know, I'm a zombie host, and that's not good enough for the symbiote, and you know, it can't live off of me anymore. And you got these little moments for these different characters, but you just can't do as well later on when you have to make it more you know, specific character pieces for different characters. There are some weird non sequitur things in this, of course, that just don't work because of what it is, and I think that some of that a lot of that is done on purpose. There's weird things like some characters don't have their superpowers anymore because it doesn't go with being a zombie, but then other ones do. I gotta kind of wonder why, for instance, Bruce Banner can still transform into the Hulk, and now it's instead of being angry, it's because he gets hungry. I feel like different things are thrown in there just because it seems sort of clever, even if there's no real reason for it. It's not based on anything. So it's like, now Bruce Banner turns into the Hulk when he gets really hungry, and then which is kind of a fun trope, just because when he's had enough to eat and he's Bruce Banner, he can't transform into the Hulk, and sometimes they need the Hulk. So I don't know, that's kind of fun. But then there's other things like Wolverine doesn't have his healing factor anymore because nobody has the ability to heal. So Wolverine's kind of helpless, which sort of begs the question as to what he's doing there anyway. One thing I thought was weird about this is, where are all the regular human beings? I guess the answer to that is they all got eaten and not turned into zombies. But one of the things that's bizarre about this, and again, I'm not going to call it a problem because this is absurd. Let me just throw it out there that this very much seems like it's absurd on purpose, and I'm on board with things like that most of the time, as long as there's something else to sink your teeth. I said it, to sink your teeth into. Like I said, there are some really clever and interesting ideas in this that propel it forward, and so I'm able to forgive some of the weird stuff because, frankly, this concept couldn't possibly completely make sense. But anyway, so there's things like that where I just find myself wondering, is it that just if you have a costume, you're around longer than regular people who don't have costumes? I mean, we see like everybody in this, and again, a lot of them, I won't tell you who, but a lot of them get killed off, or not really killed off if they're zombies already, because they make a big point about you can't die if you're a zombie, even if you don't eat, but just, you know, mutilated to the point where they can't really do anything. So it just seems like if you have a costume, you're you know, still around. There's like Zombie Kingpin in this. I'm like, why did he last any longer than anybody else? You know, is it just because he's the Kingpin and he has a supervillain-esque name? So anyway, I don't know. That's kind of silly. But there's definitely, I don't know, there's definitely a lot of silly in this. I will say that one of my favorite things about it is that it takes. Well, I'll go ahead and go this far. I won't tell you exactly how it goes down, but Galactus is in this, and when he first shows up, nobody knows who he is, and I found myself going, in fact, when Silver Surfer shows up, before that, nobody knows who he is, and it turns out that this takes place just around, apparently, Fantastic Four number 48, 49, wherever that issue is that Silver Surfer and Galactus first show up, and I thought that was really kind of a neat call, a neat idea. So you know, we get to see Galactus and we get to see the zombies deal with Galactus, and that's kind of fun. And actually, that's really fun. I think that's kind of my favorite thing about it. It makes the ending extremely goofy, which sort of makes the whole book work for me, really, because it's like, okay, they're gonna go that far. Yeah, everything works now. They're gonna go that far. It's crazy. Everything doesn't really work. I don't mean that. It's just that it's a silly book, and sometimes I really like a good silly comic book. I think that finally, this is the last thing I'm going to say about it. One of the fun things about this, for me, is just turning tropes on their heads, where the characters that we follow, for the most part, and there are some by the way, some human characters who don't get turned into zombies that show up later, but they're not the focal point in this. They're not the people that we're following. What's kind of neat is that the heroes, air quotes, because they're zombies now, still win. Seem to win every time. When they go up against a big, what's supposed to be a big evil force, they still win, even though they're zombies. And so it almost seems like the physics of the comic book universe are still intact, where if you were a superhero, even though you're a zombie now, you still pretty much are going to win, or at least you know, the major ones, the ones that this book deems are the really important ones. And I think that's kind of a fun idea. I would have that's not what I expected when I first picked this up. I thought that the heroes that got turned into zombies would become the supervillains and then would get beaten by some big force. But at least in this first miniseries, that's not exactly what happens. So it's kind of fun. You know, they go up against Magneto, and they go up against Galactus, and it's kind of amusing how it sort of turns out the way you would expect if they weren't zombies. But anyway, hopefully I didn't give too much away if you haven't had a chance to read this yet. Like I said, I haven't read all of the Marvel Zombie stuff because I sort of lost interest after 2. People have said really good things about some of the crossovers. I know they did one with Army of Darkness, and I think there's 1 or 2 others, and I haven't read those, and I'm not sure how they are, so I can't really speak to those, but this I definitely recommend. Just know that it's goofy and absurd when you go into it. Also know that it's Robert Kirkman, and so the dialogue is fantastic. And again, I've not read any Walking Dead, but all the Robert Kirkman I have happened to read around that, he is definitely a good dialogue guy. So anyway, that's it for Marvel Zombies. And remember that the Comic Book Vault is a vast and crazy wonderland of comic books that you can both donate things to and buy things from. If you want to buy anything from the Comic Vault, find out what we have on eBay right at this very moment. You can go to wearegeeksnotnerds.com, click on the Comic Book Vault, and find out what we've got for sale there right now. You can also, like I said, send us things if you'd like Vince or I or both of us to review something for you, or you just want to get rid of some comics you have laying around. We take donations at the Comic Book Vault, and that's Geekvolution, P.O. Box 14183, Lenexa, Kansas 66285. Thanks as always for watching. I'm Captain Logan, and excuse me, and happy reading.